Scene 1 of it was An Accident opens with emotional immediacy, centering Samantha and Andra's marriage at the precise moment it fractures, and it does so through rage, grief, and love rather than spectacle, grounding the story firmly in women's interior lives. Samantha's fury upon discovering Andra's affair is not portrayed as hysteria but as devastation, the kind that erupts when trust and shared history collapse at once, and her decision to leave the house is less an escape than a reflexive attempt to breathe. The accident that follows is abrupt and cruel, mirroring how queer relationships are so often framed as fragile or doomed, yet the film resists making the crash a moral punishment. It is not Andra's infidelity that causes the tragedy but a cascade of human emotion, timing, and chance. In the aftermath, Andra's grief is rendered with aching stillness as she is taken in by Emma, whose quiet kindness offers shelter without judgment, positioning her as a witness rather than a savior. Emma's home becomes a liminal space where grief blurs into memory, and it is here that Samantha's presence returns, not as a threat or a spectacle but as an intimate echo of love that refuses to be silenced. These nocturnal visitations can be read as dreams, hauntings, or manifestations of unresolved attachment, yet their emotional truth matters more than their literal explanation, especially for queer audiences accustomed to having their love stories dismissed as imaginary or temporary. Samantha's return to console Andra underscores how love persists beyond rupture, how desire and tenderness can survive betrayal, death, and silence, challenging cultural discomfort with women's intimacy by presenting it as enduring rather than fleeting. Importantly, the film keeps these moments rooted in emotional connection rather than explicit depiction, allowing viewers to focus on longing, guilt, and the need for forgiveness, themes that resonate deeply with women who have been taught to minimize their desires and emotional needs. Andra's insistence that Samantha must be alive reflects a common stage of grief, but it also speaks to a broader queer experience of fighting erasure, of clinging to proof that one's love was real and meaningful in a world that often refuses to validate it. Emma's role becomes crucial here, embodying the tension between grounding reality and honoring emotional truth, as she listens without dismissing Andra's pain, even as she gently helps her confront loss. Through these interactions, the scene mirrors real-world pressures on queer women to justify their love, to explain its intensity, or to contain it within acceptable bounds, pressures that only deepen grief when loss occurs. Samantha, as both memory and presence, symbolizes the parts of ourselves shaped by love that cannot simply be shut off, while Andra represents the painful work of integrating guilt with mourning, a task many women recognize when relationships end without closure. The haunting quality of the scene challenges society's discomfort with women loving women by refusing to frame their connection as pathological or excessive. Instead, it insists that deep attachment is a human response, not a deviation. That discomfort persists because women's desire, especially queer desire, disrupts narratives of disposability and replaceability, asserting instead that love leaves marks that cannot be easily erased. By allowing Andra to ache openly and to be comforted, both by memory and by another woman's compassion, the film advocates for emotional honesty over repression. Scene 1 ultimately becomes less about the accident itself, and more about what remains afterward, the tenderness that survives betrayal, the guilt that complicates love, and the quiet courage it takes to keep feeling in a world that urges women to move on quickly. For lesbian and LGBTQ+ viewers, this scene offers recognition rather than fantasy, affirming that grief, longing, and enduring love are not signs of weakness but evidence of having lived and loved fully, and that becoming visible in one's pain is as radical as becoming visible in one's joy. It also invites reflection on accountability without condemnation, showing that Andra's remorse is neither erased nor weaponized, and that love can hold complexity without demanding purity. By framing healing as nonlinear, the film honors how women often process trauma internally, negotiating silence, memory, and desire simultaneously. Emma's patience models a form of allyship grounded in listening, while Samantha's spectral return affirms that intimacy does not vanish simply because others declare it over. In resisting tidy closure, the scene leaves space for viewers to grieve alongside Andra, to question narratives of punishment, and to imagine futures where queer love is allowed to be messy, profound, and worthy of care. It asks audiences to sit with discomfort, to trust women's emotional authority, and to recognize that visibility, even in sorrow, is an act of resistance that transforms loss into meaning rather than silence for queer lives too long denied public mourning. Scene 2 unfolds as a quiet chamber of grief, where Emma gently consoles Andra inside a house that feels suspended between memory and breath. Andra's question about ghosts is less supernatural curiosity than a plea for permission to keep loving Samantha after death, articulating how mourning seeks language when certainty has vanished. Emma's careful response honors vulnerability, proposing that altered states open perception without dismissing truth, a stance many queer women recognize as survival amid skepticism toward their interior lives, grief practices, and loves. Emma's steadiness models care without erasure, holding space for feeling rather than proof, compassion over answers. Her confession about ancestral land and Greek roots reframes haunting as inheritance, suggesting that history carries tenderness forward rather than terror, and Andra's breathless relief reflects a common queer yearning to locate love within lineage instead of loss. Emma's admission of past fear evolves into present trust, illustrating growth through acceptance and choice, a path familiar to women taught to doubt their instincts. When Emma says spirits seek love, she validates Andra's experience without exploiting it, centering safety and consent as the ground of intimacy. The moment becomes an ethics of care, countering narratives that sensationalize women's closeness or pain. Andra's realization that Samantha is gone lands with devastating clarity. Yet Emma's empathetic nod offers accompaniment rather than conclusion, mirroring how grief rarely resolves neatly. The kiss that follows is framed not as escape but as connection, an embodied choice to remain alive within sorrow. Emma's check-in affirms agency, challenging harmful myths that grieving women lack clarity. Andra's whispered consent names desire without apology, a radical act for those socialized to postpone joy. Their closeness communicates release, not replacement, acknowledging Samantha's permanence in memory while permitting new warmth. This balance resists binaries of fidelity and betrayal, honoring complexity. It breathes visibility into women's needs for touch, comfort, and reassurance, needs too often policed or trivialized. For lesbian audiences, the scene resonates as recognition of how love persists across thresholds, refusing erasure even when names fall silent. Emma's home functions symbolically as a sanctuary built on listening, countering cultures that demand women move on quickly. Andra's ache speaks to broader experiences of queer mourning, where public rituals are scarce and private bonds carry the weight. By treating intimacy as healing, the film confronts discomfort with women choosing pleasure without spectacle, insisting that tenderness is not taboo. This insistence unsettles norms long invested in controlling women's bodies and timelines. Emma embodies steadiness without ownership, offering presence rather than cure, a model of care that many viewers crave. Andra, meanwhile, navigates guilt and longing with honesty, reflecting pressures on queer women to justify every feeling. Their exchange rejects the idea that intimacy must be earned through suffering, proposing instead that care can coexist with grief. The conversation about spirits doubles as permission to trust sensation, intuition, and memory, tools women are often taught to distrust. By framing belief as openness, the scene invites audiences to honor felt truth. It affirms that safety enables desire rather than negates it, countering myths that women's closeness is dangerous. Societal unease persists because women choosing each other destabilizes scripts of dependence, yet this scene reframes choice as mutual care. The absence of spectacle underscores the film's commitment to authenticity, allowing viewers to recognize themselves in quiet courage. Andra's willingness to feel pleasure alongside sorrow challenges moralizing narratives, while Emma's patience resists saviorism. Together, they model a relational ethic grounded in consent, listening, and time. This ethic mirrors real-world strategies queer women use to survive loss without erasing love. The scene thus becomes an argument for visibility through care, suggesting that becoming visible in grief is as radical as joy. By centering women's interiority, the film refuses voyeurism, inviting audiences to sit with complexity. Emma's home, layered with history, becomes a bridge between worlds, much like queer lives navigating past and future. Andra's choice does not erase Samantha, but honors her by choosing connection over numbness. This framing validates those who love again without forgetting, pushing back against shame. For many, the scene offers a language for healing that neither rushes nor denies. It insists that women's needs are not excessive, only human. Ultimately, the moment affirms love's capacity to hold grief without diminishing life, inviting viewers to trust tenderness as truth. It asks us to believe women when they name what they feel, and to recognize that safety and desire can coexist. By portraying intimacy as a mutual offering, the scene gently advocates for lesbian visibility, not through provocation, but through care. In a culture uneasy with women's love, It Was an Accident chooses empathy, honoring how healing begins when we are held without demand. The scene leaves space for breath, reminding us that visibility can be quiet, brave, and sustaining, and that love remains possible even